what happened then is that the title companies, they just became much more cautious as a, an outreach from the, the whole banking situation. They become very, holding things close to their chest, very conservative, allowing this practice of allowing investors to cash in from the B to C transaction to pay off the A to B, because they did not want to participate in anything that could possibly be as interpreted as fraudulent. They needed to, what they're doing is they are insuring the transaction, and so if there's any kind of fraud or any kind of problems, they're going to be the ones on the hook for it. So, most of the title companies just took a very cautious approach. So then the question is, what were the investors to do at that point? Suddenly, the title companies are no longer allowing you to use the funds from the B to C transaction to close the A to B transaction to pay off the A to B transaction. So from there, transactional funding was born. And there became a need for someone to come up with $100,000 to pay off that first deal. And as an investor, I was running into exactly the same problem, and I found that I needed cash to fund my A to B deals. And I got to thinking and realized that if I needed the service, so did plenty of other investors. And so that's why I started my business offering transactional funding via my business one-day funding. So that was kind of the progression of what led me to where I am today, offering transactional funding just out of my personal need for it myself.
And just a comment here, and this is why I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of people, new investors, and maybe even some more seasoned investors, they aren't aware this type of funding exists, number one. And number two, it's sort of like when you are not knowledgeable or you're ignorant to a potential solution or tool, you don't realize the type of application for said tool, and therefore there are a lot of opportunities out here, short sales as you went over earlier, as one, maybe even REO transactions another, where people aren't aware that they actually have opportunity right there in front of them, for sale signs in neighborhoods that they currently invest in, MLS listings that they're being emailed right now, and they're just not capitalizing on them because they're thinking, well, I don't have the cash to pull this down, or my hard money lender is way too expensive to, float this particular transaction to turn it over. So this is really where I believe this is the missing piece of the puzzle, and I'm really excited that you're sharing this information today.
Oh, absolutely. Plus, there's the whole aspect of, the banks clamping down and pulling back and not allowing investor to have more than X number of loans. So even if you did have the excellent credit and could go out and get a mortgage on a property that you'd hold for just a short period of time, the banks are saying, no way, we're not letting you have any more. It was 4, now it's 10. We're just not letting you have any more. So even if you've been an experienced investor and have not sought any quote-unquote creative financing because you've had the means to do it yourself, this is a way to get around that and stay active in the investment community and being able to go out and still flip in these properties. So absolutely. So let's talk a little bit, what is transactional funding? With transactional funding, you must have an exit strategy. It's not an open-ended situation. Transactional funding, it's defined as having an end buyer in place and under contract to buy the house that you will be buying. This means that you must have a valid contract to somebody to buy the house from you. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to buy this house and then I'm going to try to find somebody to buy it from me because it's such a good deal. No, you have to have that contract in place. That's probably the single most clearest definition of what transactional funding is there is a transaction in the front and transaction in the back. That's that second contract. Another thing about transactional funding, and it's not based on your credit score. It has nothing to do with your credit score. Credit score doesn't matter because as long as there's a valid contract for someone to purchase the house from you, then that's how you'll pay back the loan that you'll get. Not because you have a good history on paying back other loans, or but because you're going to sell that house for more money with that second transaction more money than you bought it for, and then you'll pay back the loan from the proceeds of that second transaction. So your credit score is not a factor in transactional funding. The other thing is that it's not hard money. Hard money requires that you have a loan to value of a certain percentage. It's usually 65%. Sometimes you're seeing it in this market even lower. I've seen 50, 55%. So what that means is that if you're getting the property and the house is worth, say, $100,000, then you're only going to be able to get a loan for 50, 55, 65,000 if you're going up to 65% loan to value. So with transactional funding, you get 100% of the purchase price. And so that's a big difference there between transactional funding and hard money. Another thing about hard money is that it allows you to not have a firm exit strategy. So this means that you don't necessarily have to have a firm buyer in place. You might be rehabbing a project and then hope to find a buyer later, and that's really where hard money is a fit, not transactional funding, but hard money. And with hard money, you don't have to have a purchase contract in place at the time you buy the house and borrow the funds.